Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman.
And I'm Carla Cortez.
And today we're going to be doing A Star is Born for kind of our Oscars episode. This is up for 8. We're recording this just a few days before the Oscars. So, I mean, it hasn't won anything yet. I would say it's definitely going to win Original Song. That's kind of a shoo-in.
Yeah.
Could win other things, but we don't need to go into predictions right now. So you were the one who brought this movie to my attention, and
yeah.
I read your review about it in the Triangle.
Right.
Initially.
So I saw this movie with my dad. He was actually the one who recommended it to me, and we went to go see it. And of course, we both cried, and we both thought it was great. And I wrote an article on it at the Triangle. Definitely check the Triangle out. It's cool. It's Drexel's newspaper. So yeah, we're just gonna get into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the trailer. So the trailer for this movie actually gave me the impression that it was just all centered around Jackson Maine and basically his story. But I personally thought that the movie itself was based more on the character Allie.
I mean, I think you could make an argument for either. Like, it's more around her career, for sure.
Right.
Although I did read a critique from someone, I didn't notice this when I watched it, but after hearing it and thinking back, I kind of agree. Like, it seemed like Bradley Cooper gave himself a little more screen time than maybe was warranted. And if that's true, I think that maybe detracted.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I would say it gives about equal attention to both of them, but maybe more to like him as a character.
That's okay. Interesting, because I thought the opposite. I thought it was more of like, it started off as his story, and then he meets Allie, and then it slowly starts to like turn into just focusing on Allie and her rise to success with Jackson on her side, but also Jackson being like a weight to her now, because like she's rising up more than he is, and like, and we see the ending, and we'll talk about that later. But so I thought the trailer was, I always think it's interesting when the trailer is misleading, in my opinion.
And they so often are.
Yeah, very, very often. And they choose scenes that I'm just like, why did you choose that scene out of all the scenes in the movie? Like, I don't know. So this is a good segue into the storyline. So this movie has been done.
Yeah, 4 times.
4 times.
This seems to be a better reception. Like, I haven't seen any of the old ones, but I looked quickly on IMDb, and like, the 1950s one with Judy Garland apparently got pretty good reception. It's like a 7.8, which is, if you're not familiar with IMDb, that's pretty solid. Mm-hmm. And then the 70s one with Chris Christopherson and Barbara Streisand got like a 6.4, which is a little below average. Mm. So it hasn't like held up that much. This one seems like it got pretty solid reception. It's up for 8 Oscars, and people seem to really like it. It's got a 7.9 at the moment, which will probably go down a little, but that's still well above average. It could have, I guess, we've seen a good version and we've seen a bad version, and this one seems like they did it right. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, it was a huge success. It was...
Yeah, in a critical sense, at least.
Yeah.
And financial, too. Like, a lot of people went to see it more so than, like, something that of this kind, like a musical movie.
And it definitely boosted Lady Gaga's career even more. For me, and for other people that have viewed this film that I've talked to, what really made this film was that there was neither an underdog nor a hero. In most romantic movies, I feel like the audience just sees this typical storyline of the star being a hero and guiding their underdog partner up a ladder of fame. And then, of course, the underdog becomes higher than the hero, and ultimately, the hero becomes the villain and all of that. And I feel like that's very common in storylines that are similar to this.
And it felt like that could have gone in that direction. Like, it seemed like there were a lot of opportunities to pit Jackson and Allie against each other.
Yeah.
And there was tension, but they were never at odds with each other, which I kept expecting it to go that way, like, and have them have to either choose each other or choose their career or something, like, where it seemed like I kept expecting him to get like really disappointed that his career was failing.
Yeah.
And he does, like, it was a little unclear at a lot of points, but yeah, I was expecting more of that, like what you were just talking about.
Right.
And it didn't really do that.
Yeah, and I really like that. I really like that in movies and films where it's like where you expect something and then it just doesn't It doesn't.
It subverts the convention, which is always refreshing.
Yeah. So that I at least for me, I thought that was very interesting. And then of course, with the storyline comes its characters, and we're gonna talk about the minor characters. First, I want to start off with the drag queens. Those are one of the first characters that we see. One of them is called Shangela Laquifa Wadley, played by DJ Pierce, and Emerald, which is played by William Belly. I think they did a phenomenal job of representing, true drag queens. It felt as though these drag queens could definitely be on RuPaul's Drag Race. So I thought the movie did a very good representation of that, because a lot of movies tend to over exaggerate,
or make a joke out of it,
or make a joke, and that I don't appreciate that when films do that, because it's very disrespectful, especially when you don't have to. But this film, I think it gave the drag community so much credit for for performance and original costuming and stuff like that. So I thought that was great. Even in the movie, Lady Gaga's character, Ally, says they never let girls on stage, so it's an honor to be one of the gay girls. Which is, because the true reality is that being invited as a performer at a drag show is truly a great privilege in the gay community.
I didn't know that. I would have... I mean, the people in that scene seem to do pretty well performance-wise. I'm not a great judge of that, but, that's cool. That... I mean, at least for her, it speaks well to the character, in terms of her talent. And so...
I agree, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because those women, beautiful. They really great. To go off this, the minor characters really did assist in making the film relatable. So we get introduced to Ally's best friend, Ramon, which is played by Anthony Ramos, who hints at owning the bar, which in turn is the source of the storyline. We see him through various parts of the movie as being the supporter for Ally.
Yeah. He kind of comes up less and less, but he ends up... Yeah. He stays along for the ride, which I wasn't expecting. He comes along for the first performance, but then he's still there. He's kind of part of their crew. Right.
No, right. And, yeah, and so I think those are, some of the main minor characters. Of course, we have Jackson's older brother, Bobby, who's played by Sam Elliott. Very great actor. Very underrepresented.
Up for Best Supporting Actor.
Oof, he better get that. But yeah, so he always played the role of Jackson's father, and Jackson's...
Right, because they're 20 years apart or something like that. It's... They talk about it a couple times. It's we're more like a father-son duo. So it's a weird relationship between them, and it ends up kind of crashing at a certain point.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And it crashes, but it's almost nice because they have that sort of amends at some point. They kind of little bit amend it, but it's not...
They're not friendly with each other at the end, but they understand each other more than anyone else, I think. They're not necessarily supportive. I mean, Bobby is the person who's known him the best for the longest, and in that way, he's kind of... he ends up kind of helping Ally in a way, especially at the end. Even throughout, he's sort of this is how he is. So, he's, that seemed like his most important role in the story. So.
Yeah. And so now we talk about Ally. So with Ally's character, it was interesting because throughout the film, I almost questioned if the movie was fictional or not. I actually thought at the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, maybe this is about Lady Gaga's real life, because...
Yeah, it's probably not... I mean, I would say the music that she does in the movie, at least initially, is not really Lady Gaga's actual music.
Right, and that's why I thought, is this her, is this a movie? Because I had no idea what A Star Was Born. I
actually thought from the trailer, I thought maybe it was set in the 80s or something. I don't know. I don't remember what made me think that, but there was a time before I saw it when I thought it might be. So that
interesting.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. Again, it was just I feel like the trailer just didn't really capture. And I think there's 2 trailers out there too.
There's probably a lot.
Yeah,
there's usually
a few.
Several.
Yeah,
for any given movie.
So I thought it was going to be about Gaga's life due to how centered the film was towards her singing and her performance. Because I think most of the movie is them performing.
There's a few scenes in it. It gives a lot of time to it. I wouldn't say it gives a lot of attention to it. So this was this was kind of what I noticed with the way that the performance scenes and the more relationship-centered scenes were separated. I kind of had expected, like, the performances would kind of tie into the relationship a lot. And there's not a whole lot of that. Like, I was sort of expecting it to do kind of like La La Land, where, like, the relationship was developed a lot in, like, the scenes where it focused on their career. But really, it felt this is kind of a weird comparison, but it felt a lot like a solid action movie in the way they set it up, where it's like, I think the best, like, action movie to compare it to would probably be Casino Royale, where, like, they have a solid emotional story that they can go back to, so you're not bored when it's not a performance or it's not an action scene.
Yeah.
But they did a really solid job in the songs and the performance scenes, so, like, they're fun for the audience. And, like, there's a couple points where they cross over. Like, I guess the first scene where they perform Shallows, that's kind of a point where it's like he's elevating her and the relationship's kind of developing in that performance, but it's also like a huge, like, that's the one time in the movie I think we hear the whole song, and it's a really cool performance scene. But that's kind of the biggest crossover. Like, otherwise, the performance scenes and the relationship, they're basically, like, you could take the performances out and it wouldn't detract from the relationship.
Right.
Just like you could take out action scenes from most action movies.
Right.
The story would be about the same.
Right. No, yeah. For sure. And, like, yeah, I don't think, you know, it's not like a musical, like West Side Story, where, like, the plot progresses with with song.
Yeah,
know?
it's more like I mean, I've never seen West Side Story, but it's a little more like something where
it's great. You should watch it.
Yeah, there's a lot of musicals I should probably get to see, but I don't go to them that much. So, but yeah, it was the kind of thing where, like, there wasn't storytelling power in the songs, and even, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the song lyrics related to the movie, but they don't push the parallels if they do. Like,
it doesn't dictate the movie,
or it doesn't, like, have any symbolic meaning or anything. Like, at least it's not obvious, or I haven't heard anyone say anything like that.
Right? Yeah, it's mostly like, you know, there's a lot of love songs that are like just showing her love for him,
and they're
versa.
kind of inventively written, I would say.
Right?
Like, they're not. I mean, at least the ones that they write together. The one pop song that she does, that one's just kind of generic.
Right.
I don't have much musical knowledge, but I've listened to songs.
Yeah.
I can tell, like, a hook when I hear it.
Right.
So.
No, and that song was definitely one of those, like I didn't really like it, honestly, but I know some of my friends really liked it. But
yeah, when I was watching it, though, like, the couple, like, I was watching it with my sister, and she was like, this is so not her, like, compared to earlier in the movie. Like, it's so
it throws you off a little,
and not, like,
kind of distasteful, in my opinion. I mean, well, if you took that song out of context, maybe it would, you know, it would be a better taste. But, like, I think within the movie, it was just like, oh, like, you sold out, you know.
And that was kind of another thing that it seemed like they could have made a conflict about, where, like, she was kind of not being true to herself as a musician and doing, like, the kind of career-centered choice rather than doing, like, making the kind of music she wanted to make, because it doesn't seem like that's the kind of thing that she's into.
Right.
So, and I think it's touched on, like, a little, but they really don't make, like, that could have been something that caused so much conflicts. Like, that came up a lot in La La Land, which has a lot of similarities.
Acknowledging
to this.
conflicts, yeah.
Well, yeah, but, like, doing what's better for your career versus, like, are you doing what you want to do, or are you, like, doing what like is elevating
what the people
your career?
want.
Well, not even what the people want, but what's going to elevate your career. And I kept expecting that to be another conflict that could come up, and it never really did. So I don't really know if that's good or bad. It seemed like they could have gone that way, and they didn't.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I feel like Allie does change a little bit, but her, like, originality kind of sticks to it, and she's kind of like, yeah, like, I know I'm kind of detracting from my original feel, like, but I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah, she's a very interesting character to dissect, actually, and at the beginning of the movie, I feel like the audience just falls in love with her and can even see themselves through her, like, quirky little, like, manners.
Yeah, she's very, like, she feels very real.
Very real. I feel like I have a few friends that just act exactly like her. And I was actually very surprised with with myself, how in tune I was towards her character and even towards Lady Gaga herself. There was, that whole nose theme that kept popping up. Yeah, that was
something you mentioned in your review initially.
Yeah, because I actually, for those of you who don't know me, I actually have me and her have a very similar nose. And it's funny because when I don't wear makeup, I've had people come up to me and
she could play you. Probably. I don't know how
me
that
in
would
a movie.
Work. Well, I wouldn't really happen because she's too much older than you. But if I don't know if you both got cast as a younger version of a character, you could play the younger version of her character.
I look totally not like her with makeup on, but without makeup, there's some. Yeah. I'm not trying to be
this was this was the first time I think a lot of people. I think it was the first time I've ever seen Lady Gaga look like herself.
Yeah,
not I don't.
Agreed.
I haven't seen a ton of her otherwise, but I couldn't.
No, yeah. She always has her hair dyed or she...
something like that.
Right, crazy makeup, something like that. But yeah, this is the first time I saw her and I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But I thought, I thought that detail... I haven't seen the other 4 movies and I don't know if that was a detail in those movies.
Yeah, that's very, actor specific. So right. I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that.
But I thought it was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was a nice touch.
And going back to, just, kind of feeling for her... I really liked that she was she wanted to change. She was like, I hate my nose. She just kept hinting that she really didn't like it. And the feeling of wanting to change one's physical appearance due to the comments of others is very familiar to the audience. Seeing Allie represent the same unique facial trait as myself and possibly others gave me a sense of extreme. Because I've always wanted to change my nose. I don't like my nose. Well, now I do. I love my nose, but but growing up, I hated my nose, and just kind of seeing that type of representation was really nice. And going back to the minor characters, her best friend was Latino. These drag queens they're gay.
It did a good job with diverse casting.
Yeah, diverse casting, diverse backstories. It was just I appreciated that, and that's a very big reason why I really, really enjoyed the film. Also, going back to Allie and the way she is, and there were serious moments. Which these were the instances where I felt like a lot of people related. Where there were serious moments where typically both characters in a typical romance movie would respond and with clever comebacks or well formatted lines. But Allie would just respond with a laugh. For example, in the scene when Jackson took off her taped eyebrows and he mentioned her beauty, and she just paused and then. Instead of being tee-hee.
They let the awkward moment kind of happen.
Exactly. They let it sit, and then she just says something about her eyebrows being weird, and then, it causes the audience to be like, oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Because
that was something, when I was doing this analysis, I asked, because, so there were 3 people who recommended this movie to me. First was you, the second was my sister, and the third was a friend from high school, and, I asked my sister, what made you like this? And she was like, I love that every line in this movie felt realistic.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it does. And a lot of, it's one thing to have a movie do that, but it's another thing to have realistic dialogue in a story that works. And
right.
Because that's a hard balance to strike. But I agree. I think that made it, there wasn't anything that felt written. Yeah. And all those little, awkward moments really added to it and made them feel so much more real.
Yeah, because in so many movies, a character will just say something. I'm like, who would ever say that?
Yeah. Or they'll pause situation? Way too long.
Oh, it's too long. And you're just like, dude, someone would have definitely intervened and been like, what's up?
Yeah, and I just wonder, have you two, ever been in a real conversation? This doesn't happen.
Exactly. And that makes me so frustrated because it's I don't know. We're digressing, but...
Well, it's a reason people like it.
Yes.
Or it's a reason that I think it works so well.
Right.
So, it's worth maybe giving a little too much time to it. But.
Yeah. So then, it's a good segue into Bradley Cooper's character, Jackson Maine. This individual really puts forth in motion the story of a person who literally experiences the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. His story involves alcoholism, a lot of points of self-doubt, and basically, throughout the film, he just constantly feels alone, no matter how many people knew him or surrounded him.
We never get, like, a full picture of him, though.
Right,
I felt like.
yeah.
There were a lot of things that, like, we kind of got all of his problems in bits, and we never really got the whole thing.
Right.
Which, I was surprised at how well it worked, because it feels, thinking about it, I feel a little like, I want to know more. But I didn't while I was watching it, so...
Right, yeah.
I'm not sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
And you know why I think that... I mean, you know, feel free to disagree, but I kind of think that happened because the movie itself placed him as such a slowly in the position of a minor character towards the end. Where, well, before his suicide.
Yeah.
So in the middle, like, from the beginning, aside from the end, where he was kind of the main... or equal level of Allie, I think in the middle he just kind of was like in and out of the movie.
Yeah, I guess so, because you're kind of rooting for her more at that point.
Right.
I don't know if minor character, that might be taking it a little too far, but you can see that he's becoming like, if we want to like look at the narrative of Allie's life, he's becoming the minor character in her story
because of Rez. Because that starts happening once Rez comes into the picture. And then after that, and, you know, and after... It's a very unique situation. Because he isn't even upset about like, descending from his fame.
That was something I was curious about. Because I kept thinking, like, he's going to get mad that she's being more successful than him.
And
we never really understand, like, did he actually like being famous? Was that, like, a major thing for him? I kept on wondering that.
Yeah. No, I wondered the same exact thing.
It never gives us an answer for that.
Yeah. I completely agree, and like we never, but it gives you a sense that he didn't. It gives you a sense that he just like didn't really care about it.
Yeah, we never see one way or the other, especially the way he reacts to his fans. Like, I kept on thinking, like, if you're a fan of his and you're like, oh my god, it's Jackson Maine, he's just kind of like, hey, yeah,
like
that's me. Like, he has, his intensity's at about a 2 the entire movie.
But then that what comes into question is, do you think that was kind of showing depression? Because that's a major sign of depression where nothing really like gets you going in a way.
I could believe it if it was, for sure.
Because I thought, that's another thing. I think the movie represented, like real life struggles of alcoholism and like depression, anxiety, like handling fame, stuff like that. I think the movie handled that very, very well because it didn't exaggerate it. It didn't exaggerate certain aspects.
They basically nodded to the fact that like he's like on a bunch of medication. I don't know what kind, but like it nodded that he like it gave the indication that he did it, and then not that they didn't talk about it, but they didn't show it beyond that. That was probably a good choice to do it because that's not really what the story's about.
Agreed.
But like it felt like in a lot of other movies they would have gone another direction with
it. Right. Yeah. And basically in this movie, the audience gets, to feel sympathy for not only him but also for her.
Yeah, I kept on wondering, like she seemed like there were a lot of reasons she could have left him.
And
she was like really constantly supportive.
But not only exactly precisely. She was very supportive because again, like the big one. That was like, I immediately, because again, I've never heard of Star is Born and I've never seen it, but a big indicator that I thought was an indicator that she was going to leave him for good was when she accepted her award.
Oh, the Grammy scene. Yeah, that was major.
That scene, I was like, okay, they're done. This isn't a love story anymore.
Right, because that would be a major blow to her reputation. Like, that would have stolen. That totally stole the moment. Like, it's not Allie getting a Grammy. It's look at what her husband just did. No one would have that would have been what people remembered.
And this is a perfect dive into their relationship. Mm-hmm. Basically, that I think that moment was when, for me at least, when I was like, okay, this love story is one I haven't seen, ever in other type of movies. It's one like none other, but it's very real. They lift each other up and keep lifting each other up until the very end. When they fight or there's problems throughout, they resolve it in such an organic manner. Like, for example, in when he was very drunk and he smushed a pie in her face or a cupcake or whatever.
And it was like right after she'd gotten some she'd signed with someone. It was a big moment
deal,
in her career. I forget exactly what it was, but that scene I was curious about too, because I was like, is he like taking revenge on her?
Yeah,
and it ended up being kind of like a playful moment where he was like actually proud of her
because she laughed instead of getting angry and being like, why did you do?
But there was a lot of tension in that moment because it was like, what's he playing at here?
Yep. And I just, that's amazing because like sometimes like you get mad at your partner and then they do something stupid and you just laugh. But in normal romantic movies, that like is.
Yeah, they would turn it into a huge fight.
Exactly. Like a plot twist or some... Not a plot twist,
it would become
like,
a divide. Or,
yes.
Or a major...
conflict.
Yeah, that would like eventually be like a part of bring the relationship down.
Right. And
it's brushed over, basically.
Yeah. And what it also makes it organic is that they show, like... I don't know. I thought this was a very pure love. Like, I want to find reasons to, to bash it or something. But I honestly, when I was watching it, I was like, this is what an actual supportive... I don't want to say not toxic, because there are toxic moments, but... Right.
He's not a stable person.
Exactly.
Sure. She seems stable enough.
Right.
From what we see.
Right. Yeah. And, and I think they represented a lot of, like, relationships out there because again in normal romantic movies they idealize romance to a point where it's fake, to a point where it's like it's to a point where it's toxic to an audience, because then an audience tries to mimic that and it just...
I mean, I've at least heard things. I haven't seen a whole lot of rom-coms, a few, but they're
problematic. Rom-coms
I've heard,
problematic. Yeah, I personally, I used to be obsessed with rom-coms, and I'll watch a rom-com here and there, but then in the end I'll still have a bad taste and be like, that's not realistic, and that's not... I don't know, like, side note, when I was growing up, I thought that was love, what I saw on TV and stuff. And so, obviously, after being in a relationship and all that, like, you get the full picture, and you're like, that is totally not what it is. So, it's cool to see that in modern film, they're being more realistic.
Yeah, they're giving it more respect, I guess.
Agreed. And what I really love, too, is that Allie doesn't instantly fall in love with Jackson. Which is kind of what makes the story, even
she does
more
pay attention to him as a person, though. Like one of the like on that first night, she's like, "How can you deal with people treating you like you're not a real person?" Like the guys in the bar trying to take a picture of him. She's like, "That's not okay." And I don't know. I've never had an encounter with a celebrity like that, but I mean, if Chris Nolan came to Drexel's campus, I'd totally do that. Yeah. So I can't.
Yeah. No,
I can't claim to be on her side.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I would just be like, I need to tell this person how amazing they are, and just oh gosh, but and it's cool because that also humanizes, famous people, which it does happen a lot in movies, but I think it was cool that they called it out.
Yeah, and that was... It wasn't really her way in. Like, he didn't seem to care. And it never was... they never pushed the idea that, she was the first person to see him as a person. Mm-hmm. Even though that may have been true. Like, that wasn't why he stuck with her. That was another thing I felt like maybe that could be, a drive for their relationship. Mm-hmm. And another thing that could pull it apart. And they never really talk about it.
Right. Yeah. And... I don't know. Yeah. And that's, I really like that. I really like how this movie just handled a lot of the situations where, again, a lot of times we'd be like, oh, this is the game changer, and then nothing would change. And or nothing drastic would happen. So the ending, I think this is I think we should definitely talk about that. I thought it was one of those endings that I was just like, I didn't really see it coming, but then when I look back into the movie, I'm like, okay, there were so many signs.
Because he never starts getting better, really.
Yeah.
So
he just stays stagnant. He just,
Yeah, he does try, but he never really gets anywhere.
Right.
He goes to rehab near the end and, puts in the work,
right.
But he's not cured. And I don't think we were ever supposed to get the sense that he was cured.
Yeah. I mean, basically, we can blame Rev for
Yeah.
Because, I don't know. I think a lot of the blame does go to Rev, but also, like, his already bad mental state is also to blame.
I was wondering, like, this is kind of a question that I've been going back and forth with since watching it. So when I first saw it, like, when I first saw it and he hangs himself in the garage, I was like, okay. At first I thought it was, like, selfish. Like, he's saying he, like, couldn't handle that Allie was doing so much better than him.
Yeah.
But then I went back and, like, read through the scenes that led up to it, and I'm starting to think that maybe it was actually, like, he felt like she couldn't become a big enough star. Or, like, he felt like he was slowing her down.
That's exactly
and didn't want to keep doing that. Mm-hmm. So you think it's the second one?
Yeah, no, because Rev puts all of those ideas in his head, being like, you're dragging her down, you're doing this, you're doing that, and then, the moment where we see that going through his head was when he was laying in bed during that, and then, like, Allie comes in and, like, talks to him a little bit, and then, like, kisses him, and, like, and then she leaves, and he's still, and I think that really, really, really got into his head, and that's ultimately.
I thought it was mostly the scene with Rev at first too. Like, at first I thought that was the thing that did it. And that was, but now I'm thinking it definitely wasn't the only thing, because he's throughout the whole movie he's, like, progressively living more and more vicariously through her and gets, like, really invested in her career. So I think this was what this was what he wanted to, like.
Right.
Elevate her. That seemed like his main priority.
So then to feel like you're dragging someone down, and I think he was already starting to suspect that.
Yeah, and the conversation with Rev was, like, confirmation to him from someone else.
Exactly.
That's what it seems like.
I agree. I full-heartedly agree. Yeah, I think that was, like, the tipping point for him, because he was like, oh my gosh, like, everything I was fearing is true. And, of course, when you mix alcohol with that.
Yeah. I still think his suicide was, like, kind of a selfish thing too, because
you think?
Well, because I think because like, if he really cared about her, he would have gotten his act together. I think he does try and fails basically, but probably could have put in a little more work there.
I kind of disagree. I think when someone is in already a bad mental state and they're not getting help, and then one after another, like a blow after a blow keeps happening, and then, and when the person you love the most, I'm trying to see it from his side, like the person you love the most and you just want them to be happy and stuff, when you start to feel like you're a burden on top of having all of those, like, unhealthy mental thoughts, I think it can just push someone to do something very upsetting like that, like very, very unfortunate. And I don't know, I felt for him. I had a very, very soft spot for him, and I was like, you know what, you thought that was the best decision, to just disappear, because he knew that she would never leave him.
Yeah, I hated him initially when that happened, and I still don't not hate him for doing that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, too, yeah, and everyone,
I can see where you're coming from, though, but I didn't have that reaction.
Vice versa, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, too. So, I guess this is a question for the audience, like, do you think that Jackson Maine's suicide was selfless or selfish?
Yeah, I think he did it for her. I still don't think it was in her. If he had really thought it through, I don't think it was really in Allie's best interests.
Right. But yeah, I guess to wrap it up, I saw this with my dad for the first time, and, like, we totally, like, it was really cool because we had a very in-depth conversation. And that's actually what led me to write the article, was because we were talking about this film. And he said something very interesting that I took with me, and really processed it. And, I would like you and the audience to take away from this film, is that he just said life can really turn around in a second. One day you're on top, and the next you're watching someone else take the stage. You truly never know what's going to happen, which can really apply to any regular situation, not just on a performance level. And I think that is what the audience can, one of the things, or one of the lessons that the audience can take from that movie, that my dad made me see. I don't know. Crazy.
I kind of looked at it more like I mean, my takeaway, this is definitely not as much of a life thing. This is a
No, go for it.
writing thing.
I'm a sap,
I mean,
so, like, you're good.
No, well, I mean, I have that reaction to other things. I didn't have it to this. But, I mean, my reaction from, like, what you can learn from, like, writing your own stories, and this is something that I've been really trying to do this week with, like, the thing that I'm writing for school. Start with the core story. The thing that I think makes this work really well is that, so we have the song that everyone knows and will probably, if they haven't already, get pretty sick of. I mean, it's still a solid song, but like,
right.
there's a lot, like it has some like fun moments for people, but you're not waiting for those to happen. There's a really solid emotional story in there, and it seemed like they focused on that first, and then they were like, all right, let's make these songs and make it like a really good version of this.
Yeah.
And then they made the dialogue naturalistic. And there's a lot of movies that I think, and like including the one I'm working on, this was what I kept on telling myself this week. I was like, you have like these moments, but you need to make a solid emotional story to go with it. And like there's a lot of movies that I think could take from that. Like, I don't want to rip it apart more, but Frances Ha, I think, was an example of like there's some really good naturalistic dialogue in there, but it could have done a little more. It could have done with a little more focus on like the emotional story in it. Same with like in terms of musicals, like Bye Bye Birdie and Greatest Showman. There's really fun songs in there. But when you peel back, like, when you take away the songs from Bye Bye Birdie, there are a ton of problems with that story. Like, there are a lot of big holes.
I've never watched.
Yeah, I worked on, that was one of 2 shows I did in high school, and when I was doing it, like, the people I was working on it with, we had a lot of time with, like, the characters, and we were like, yeah, this really doesn't work. The logic of this really doesn't check out that well.
For sure.
And then, yeah, in terms of, like, there's a ton of action movies that could take this lesson where like you've got like, especially like Fast and Furious, there's some like really big action scenes in it.
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with those. There's like they have some big action scenes, but if you peel it back, like if you take those away, it's not a well constructed movie. I haven't seen all of them, but like only one of them I think maybe counts as a decent movie. But yeah, that was my takeaway. Like.
Cool.
And I think that's what makes it work.
Yeah. So please let us know your takeaway from the movie, whether you liked it, you hated it, thought it was cheesy, thought it was amazing. We would really like to hear your feedback. And yeah. Yeah.
Couple of quick housekeeping things. Yeah. Send in comments to erw58@drexel.edu. Let us know what movies you want us to do in the future. Our next one is going to be Inside Out, and we've mentioned this on a couple of previous episodes. Send in your ideas for like who would be your emotions in like context of that movie, or what your islands of personality are. It's kind of fun things that we can talk about when we do that as our next one. Thanks to Isabella Ektarshanaz for making the logo. Did I say that right?
I hope so.
Okay. Yeah.
Bella, if you're hearing this, so sorry.
Yeah. And we have stickers, so with our logo on them, if you want one, just ask one of us. We can hook you up with one.
Yeah.
Also, we are no longer posting on SoundCloud. We kind of ran out of space there. So we're pretty much going to be exclusively putting things up on Spotify. It's also on Google Play, I think, but I haven't seen that. I don't have that, so I haven't really been able to check. But yeah, keep looking for it on Spotify. That's where the rest of them are going to be. I think that's all. Do you have any quick Oscar predictions that you want to get out?
Oh my god, I don't even. Nope, I have none.
All right, not even for this. Like anything you think that Star is Born.
I'm gonna be so honest with you. I haven't even checked it. I usually just check it the day of like all the nominees and like all that.
Yeah, well, I had to write an article on it for the Triangle. That's one other thing. Thank you to, I don't know if anyone listening to this reads the Triangle, but we got a lot of donations the past month. We were going to shut down. Both of us write for it.
Right.
And if you donated, thank you very much, because we met our goal. And you're no pressure, but you're welcome to donate more, because we will always take more funding. But we are actually good for the moment.
Yeah. And
we'll be able to keep putting out on Fridays.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
And catch us next week.
With Inside Out. Yeah.